Hello, and welcome to the League Presents, a series of programs produced by the League of Women Voters of Newton. The League Presents strives to inform the voters and residents of Newton about the operations of local government and current issues that are important for our community. My name is Kathy Shields, and I am a member of the board of the League of Women Voters of Newton. For this conversation, I am joined by Dr. Anna Nolin, who is in her third year as the superintendent of Newton Public Schools. So let's get started. Welcome, Dr. Nolin.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. So I wanted to start off asking you a little bit about something that I think is an issue frequently for you in the community. I've heard you and many other educators talk about the increasing complexity of schools today. So could you talk about some of the parts of schools that are different than they were 25 or 30 years ago and how those changes impact your budget?
Sure. I mean, it is the essential question for Newton and Newton voters. School is very different than it was a decade ago and certainly 2 decades ago. And I can say that ranges from challenges like social media and technology to sort of how the geopolitical dynamics are hitting students and their engagement here. And Newton families and kids are pretty engaged in those conversations, but they come with challenges and assets. And it's also things like state mandates that have layered on over several decades of what is called ed reform in Massachusetts that has put increasing pressure on schools.
Can you give us a couple of examples of those state mandates, maybe?
Sure. I'll give you one example just that's really fresh. The state is considering a bell-to-bell cell phone ban, which sounds like a really amazing thing to do, but it's not very simple to do, especially when we have open campuses at our high schools. So it just requires sometimes staffing and budgetary investments that increase what we have to ask the voters for, and it certainly increases complexity of the day. That's sort of an operational challenge. Other operational challenges include safety procedures and security measures that have to be implemented just given the violence that schools sometimes see. So that might be different types of doors and windows, that might be emergency alert systems, practicing for things like lockdowns and active shooter drills, really a different level of complexity than even 2 decades ago. And then there are mandates from the state for things that didn't used to have to happen. So for example, I had this very funny interaction at Whole Foods once where this senior citizen woman came to me and said, "You're that Thrive lady, right, who talks about what it takes for kids to thrive." And I felt very effective that she
Your
could
message
say
is
that.
out there, yeah.
But then she's like, "I read in the budget that you have athletic trainers for the kids. That's really kind of a boutique kind of thing to give to kids." And she thought it meant like athletic trainers, like Lifetime Fitness kind of athletic trainers.
Gotcha.
When in fact, there are state regulations for the Mass Interscholastic Athletic Association that an athletic trainer, i.e. a person who takes care of bones and breaks and concussions and students' physical health and training, have to be present by state regulation during these events. And so, she was like, "Oh, I get it. You really should tell people about that in the budget because people like me think, that you're kind of making this luxurious budget when there are just a lot of things like that." And I think another topic that comes up a lot for us in Newton is we have some of the most dynamic, flexible, and progressive special education programs I've ever seen anywhere in the nation or in the state, certainly.
Yeah, and we tend to keep a lot of our special ed students in our district.
We do,
many,
and
right?
it's such a jewel that we are able to do that, but it does come with some complexity that maybe isn't apparent to folks. So, I've been a teacher and an educator in Metro West for 30 years. And when I started teaching in the Framingham Public Schools in the late 90s, there was no such thing as a behavior technician. That wasn't a thing, or a BCBA, which is a board certified behavior analyst. Now they're written into IEPs almost everywhere. Yeah. And, they have real success with students, things that maybe we needed 30 years ago but didn't have.
Sure.
But it does add a layer of complexity to the classroom and to the training that teachers need. And so that's just something, my job is to teach everyone about that. And it's different than it used to be.
Sure. And it sounds like a lot of these things probably have implications for the budget
They
too.
They do.
So maybe that's a segue into our next topic. It's starting to be budget season. I know we're a little early for that to happen, but what are looking ahead to that this year, what are your concerns going into this year's budget season?
You know, we actually are starting earlier. I want to say that our new mayor, Mark Laredo, we've been speaking all summer, and even before he was officially in, just, you know, how could this work? How can we create a budget moment that addresses the needs of the school system, balances our needs within the city ecosystem, and doesn't create that conflict and drama that we've seen through the last few budget seasons. So I really appreciate the outreach and the ethic. And you know, we are meeting with our new school committee now to develop what does that look like. And I think what's different right now for us is the idea is we want to get to that thriving budget that you've put out there. How can we lay that out in a systematic way so that the budget can meet the demand and I'm not put with my back against a wall to have to sort of scrum for every single part of the budget, and we can focus our collective energies on the longer term plan for the city and schools. And so I've appreciated that opening. So that's where we sit. So I don't have any worries yet, except I know that we live in a city that has finite resources.
Sure.
And, you know, I worry that folks think the schools might be, you know, with all these mandates and all the complexity, just a never-ending sort of bottomless request of funding. And that really isn't the case, and that's the beauty of our new strategic plan, which says, these are the things that we really want to accomplish by 2030. There's no secrets. I'm not pulling some rabbit out of the hat.
Yeah.
Now, if new state mandates come out,
we'll
have to revise them.
Sure.
But it really does say this is what our community said they valued in a one-year strategic planning process, and how can we fund that in a very methodical way so there's no surprises.
So for some of our viewers who may not be following the budget and your proposals and the strategic plan so closely, what are maybe 2 or 3 of the things that you're hoping to sort of add in or incorporate into the budget over the next year or 2 or 3 years?
Well, certainly I think the average Newton citizen knows that there has been a little bit of a period of neglect, let's say, of facilities. And so there's been a huge acceleration and a lot of great work by our former mayor, Ruth Ann Fuller, to get out of that hole and to upgrade our facilities. Well, there are other parts of the Newton School experience that need that same accelerated repair, if you will.
Sure.
I'll say that curriculum and professional development for teachers has been something systematically cut through these times of hardship in the budget. And so the district hasn't had a formal curriculum review until we started the math one last year in over 25 years. So I have great faith in our teachers' capacity to do good work, but if we want to have a system that parents and students can rely on, we have to design it and review it periodically and make sure that teachers have the resources to actually meet the state standards and push students to their best selves. So what has happened over time is teachers have had to really find their own resources. And so the variation between what each, let's say, 7th grade classroom looks like within a building and even across our 4 middle schools is really quite varied. And so we need to invest in curriculum and materials and training for our teachers. And that is a K-12 need. So that's going to be a big part. And I would say the second part is we want families to trust us that this is what all students are going to receive in their education. And when they need help or they need advanced support, we can provide that within the school system and not have to outsource it to tutors or other enrichment groups. We want to be able to provide that. That does require resources.
Sure.
And it also requires intervention staff, which has, until last year, we did not have intervention staff specialists designed to design math and English interventions. We had many really wonderful people who were doing one-on-one reading with students, or those types of activities. But literacy and math specialists who intervene with students and have that true training for that. Those are pieces we have been successful in reorganizing internally without additional cost to the system for K-5 classes. We now need to invest in the 5 to 12 equivalent so that our students have that really nice, strong backbone of support wherever they go in our system.
So these reorganizations or investments in the interventionists, what made you decide to start at the elementary school level?
Well, lucky for us, there had been some movement around before I even arrived on a new literacy curriculum. So I did not get to help choose it, but I got to roll it out. And at the same time, it's no secret if you are a parent of a child in Newton that there's some concern over the rigor of the math program, K to 12. So those two moments of deploying and reviewing curriculum in our core subject areas, English, language arts, and mathematics, really allowed us to see where the breakdowns were. And we started with our littlest learners because we had some guaranteed curriculum there. And that really is the foundation of intervention. You have to say, this is what all people get, and then what do some people need? And so we're building that system.
I think we've strayed a little bit from the budget, so I want to go back to that for a little bit, and then we'll talk some more about curriculum issues. But some of the other budget sort of boogeymen in the past have been healthcare and some of the facilities-related things. How do you see the budget implications of healthcare increases going forward? Well,
we certainly had quite the battle last year about these areas. Every school system is rocked by the healthcare challenges in those rising costs. And the state, in terms of its reimbursement for education dollars, has not kept pace with what the needs are. So, of course, the demand on the local city is even greater. But both, I'll say, facilities, technology, professional development, and healthcare were the 4 areas of our budget that were removed last year and replaced with one-time free cash funding sources. And that is just not a good idea because now when we make a budget proposal this year, to even stay level in terms of service, to just provide the same thing that we did this year without any changes or any of these new intervention programs or curriculum that I said, we have to make up that deficit, which last year was about $4 million taken out and paid for by free cash. So, that's a real challenge for the city. And the system has not kept those items on pace in their budget. And we need to be real with ourselves that if you don't do that, you will continue to have those degraded buildings, the no professional development. And, we have to fund healthcare. It's our contractual cost to our employees.
So thinking ahead, it seems like you've been doing a lot of multi-year forecasting with your budget and modeling going forward. How are you communicating to Newton residents about your model year or your multi-year projections?
Well, I never miss a time to try to meet with a group and to tell them those things. We do have monthly PTO meetings at all of our elementary schools, and we join, the school committee and I, and we've been inviting our government partners to join us. So, for example, this morning we were at the Ward School. The mayor joined us, 2 of our school committee members, and several of our city councilors. So we just had a discussion much like we're having here, talking about what to expect in the budget season, what are the big challenges, and what are the cost drivers. We've also done, for the last 2 years, community budget meetings during the budget season where people can come and hear the overall budget presentation in a public-friendly way, not a necessarily school committee finance way.
Not down in the details.
Right. I mean, unless they want them, but also to ask questions that they have. And sometimes it's school-age folks, sometimes it's older adults within the community or business owners. So we had a really nice turnout at those 2 events last year.
That's great to hear.
Also developing marketing materials. We've been advertising our strategic plan and also just talking about the need for funding and where.
So maybe we'll transition a little bit to it's not quite marketing materials, but over the last couple of years, Newton Public Schools employed a consultant to develop what was originally called the Portrait of a Graduate, has now been referred to as the Portrait of a Learner. So maybe can you talk about that process a little bit and how you're using it,
Sure.
either in marketing NPS or driving sort of how you're doing business every day?
So, previously I talked to you about how we're moving from being a system of schools to a school system in terms of our teaching and learning obligations and our intervention services. I would also say that in terms of the vision for the humans that we are creating in schools, I would say the Portrait of a Learner is really the grounding core values. And a consultant came to facilitate us, but it was really a community-wide effort. And so students were on it, staff, government partners, principals, union leaders. So there were over 75 people participated in the creation and selection of the competencies. Yeah. And much of it started with a discussion of what are the jobs of the future, what are the experiences of the future that we are trying to prepare our young people for. And these competencies that are shared here, adaptability, communication, critical thinking, learner's mindset, and empathy, are the ones that our community said, we think these are the ones. This is going to serve a student no matter where they choose to go, and actually help them have the competencies to choose where they go. So at this point, we're teaching people that these are the competencies, and we asked every teacher this year to sort of map, what do you do already that is in these areas? And there's tons of overlap with our social emotional learning committees and work, how teachers set goals with students. So there's lots to celebrate there. We asked teachers, as we're talking about thriving, and we've created a podcast called The Thrive Hive. So that's another way that we're talking about amazing teachers and kids. Yeah. And we asked teachers on little honeycomb shaped artifacts to bring to life for us one of these competencies in their classroom. And so faculties have been submitting them, and it's our intention to create an art installation at our professional development day next year to show them this is what you already do, and we'll have like the kindergarten through 12 under each competency and show people what we're doing already. From there, we'll most likely create some sort of K-12, like how are we going to track these competencies for kids? How can we help them use it for their college applications, for job applications? So we're really in the infancy stages of putting it on legs.
Sure. That kind of art installation seems like the kind of thing you could photograph or memorialize in some way to be shown at lots of different public events. That sounds like a really
it's very
great
Newton.
idea.
They love their mosaics here, and so we tried to model it on traditions within the community.
That sounds wonderful. So one of the things we sort of started talking about curriculum changes, but do you want to talk a little bit more about sort of the kinds of changes you're hoping to make as a result of this more detailed curriculum review process?
So obviously we want to have the public's trust that we are looking at what we do and seeking the best for the Newton students. I mean, we have every intention of being the most premier school system in the world. So we want to be able to say to families, we've turned over every rock and we've looked at every single resource. I also want to say that our teachers are incredibly talented and well-trained, and many are very experienced. And so the wisdom is in the room, and we can bring some new ideas and some new resources now that they're able to look and able to actually think about, well, we do have some funding to refresh this. And this alignment piece is really critical, because while we are a very high-functioning school system, there is great variance across schools and within grade levels. And we need to shore that up so that it actually doesn't depend which side of town you were born on, or which teacher you get, or who your principal is, that there's just some guarantees. So that's the first piece that we really need to look at. And second, we need to say to ourselves, how do we really know when students are mastering what we say we need them to master? So We're in the process of implementing benchmark assessments for the first time, grades kindergarten through ninth grade, in math and English language arts 3 times a year. So those
are those star reading
they are
and
the
math?
STAR assessments, yes, from Renaissance Learning. And they're not like everything about the child, but they are snapshots in time of seeing how is our child developing over time in these areas. So we're tracking growth and achievement. And it also suggests areas for intervention for students and areas of extension. So then it really can hone the teacher's attention into, okay, for this student, these are the things.
Sure.
So we also are working to help our teachers, once we have defined common curriculum, we'll let them tell us what are the major assessments that you think tell you that students are mastering the content. And those would be considered common assessments within grade levels. And we're looking forward to that process once we adopt some common curriculum for teachers to say, this is what's most important. We want to see how we're doing with that. And once that happens, we'll have a good portfolio of ways to sort of check the temperature on kids' achievement. And that's what we owe parents and kids, that we're always checking and that we're trying to find that the intervention or extension that they need.
That makes a lot of sense. And how does that play into the multi-level classroom discussion at the high schools? I know that's been a hot topic lately.
Well, so first I'll just say, as a longtime middle school educator, like K to 8, multi-level that's what it is, right?
Yeah, it's all multi-level.
Right, so I want to say that therefore those intervention systems and those ways that we track student achievement are so important, because you want to make sure that you're actually addressing the needs of the kids in the room. I just want to say that, multi-level classes in our district mean 10 different things. So
sure.
High schools do it differently, both our high schools.
And it also probably depends a lot on the subject area. Like a multi-level
100%.
French classroom is going to look a lot different than a
That's
multi-level English classroom.
And I'll also say we have mixed grade classes at our high schools,
sure.
right? So it really depends what people are talking about when they say multi-level. But there are these persistent, I'll call them fake news snippets that happen pretty often. I follow our social media here in Newton just because I want to make sure that fake news doesn't persist.
Yeah.
So one of the pieces of fake news is that we don't offer honors or advanced classes, and we certainly do. And we offer so many AP courses, just like many of our peer districts. So I want everyone to know that remains unchanged.
Way more than I even thought there were.
Right,
I have to say, as a high school parent, goodness, the course selection is unbelievable.
And we're really working hard to expand how many students have access to those AP courses. And I'm happy to report, I'll be sharing with the school committee, that both our schools made the AP honor roll this year for the number of students that they are having in AP courses. So
that's great.
So that's really the college level courses that are happening. We also will continue to go through the curriculum review cycles, and those departments across town will develop the pathways and the different types of course levels that will occur in the future. So I guess I want to get out of the business of talking about multi-level and say that we are looking at the rigor of all of our experiences. What does it mean when a student is an honors student or not? Yeah. And making sure that we are providing what the state standards want us to and more, because Newton is capable of so much more than just the minimum state standards. So good news is our teachers have that expertise, and we're just looking for alignment.
It makes a lot of sense. It also seems to track the experiences I've had as a parent in the Newton Public Schools too.
Good.
So one of the things you talked about during your hiring process and in your first 6 or 8 months in town was increasing family and community engagement. And I know that's been a lot of effort on your part. So do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things you've done that are new in Newton and what you've seen in terms of payoff from those?
Well, I'm told that one thing that was new was just like being out there and everywhere. So I started 2.5 years ago here with a barbecue tour of the city. Which I didn't eat a lot of barbecue, truth be told, but I said, if you can get 25 people together in your neighborhood, I'll come. And it was a great experience to get to know all the parts of the city and.
Sure.
I learned a ton about where I should be paying attention. And I think, we've talked a lot over the last few years about trust and how do you build that. And I think, opening our doors to families and making them feel welcomed in is one way to build that trust. And certainly then transparency, because we're telling them what we do.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. Really have tried through our communications department, which is family and community engagement, to let parents know we're here for you. We're here to help you navigate the system. We don't want you to be confused by what we're doing. We want you to know where to go if you have questions. And so we have opened a family engagement center at the education center, which helps with translations, registration, questions about student support. It's our truancy prevention program, and we now have a truancy officer. That's another one of those complexities that is required by state law that Newton just did not have. So those types of programs allow parents to rely on us and to have a place to go when they need something. We also have like a clothes closet there, and we're resource connectors, social workers to help families. So lots of different family options there. We've also started the Parent Academy, which is
what is that?
Education sessions. So for example, all through the month of February, those new assessments I told you about, they come with reports that maybe parents don't know how to read. So we send them home, but we need parents to know what to do with them.
Sure.
So we're having these sessions in February called How Do I Know How My Child's Doing in the Newton Public Schools? And we'll go over progress reports and report cards, STAR assessments, early literacy screeners and dyslexia screeners, and social emotional screeners. So all the things we're doing with your children, we want you to know how to ask us questions about it.
That sounds great. It sounds like that's something we could definitely use as well.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Sure.
This was a really informative conversation, and we really appreciate you taking the time to discuss your work as NPS superintendent and your plans for the district and its students. With budget season approaching, this information will be important for all Newton residents and provide a lot of context, hopefully, for those discussions. So on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Newton, if you have comments or ideas on this show and ideas for future topics, you can email info@lwvnewton.org. The specific comments and opinions shared during this program do not necessarily represent those of the League of Women Voters or of New TV. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, multi-issue, grassroots organization that encourages informed and active participation in local, state, and national government. The League develops positions on issues, but does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. Membership in the League is open to all citizens of voting age. You will be able to view all League Presents programs on New TV or on lwvnewton.org. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Newton, I want to thank all members of the New TV crew who always do a fantastic job in producing these shows. Thank you so much.